Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to hit you up with a, where is that thing? Right there. Another rough country install video. Not a direct how-to, but a basic install and some upgrades on this 2007 Toyota 4Runner that's on its way here right now. Customer opted for the rough country 3-inch suspension lift. That is going to be the loaded struts, rear coils, rear shocks, and maybe sway bar. I don't know. There's a few other little parts in there. They also wanted their upper control arms replaced to allow some more of, I guess, adjustability for an alignment as well. So we got the upper control arms over there. We've also got a set of the Nitto, what are these things? These are the new Nitto Recon Grappler ATs in a 285. That is going on this thing as well. So it's in here for a whole makeover. And at the end, we're going to go ahead, I've done it in the past, oil undercoat this thing. So we're going to get probably covered in oil today too. But come along, I'll get all the parts out and show you what we got. All right, over here, not the Terraflix. The rough country stuff is right over here. So I'm going to get this stuff up over onto the bench. Upper control arms from Freedom Offroad are over there. And some upper control arm bolts in case we run into that problem. Because, well, let's face it, it's a 2007. There's going to be some rust. All right, here it is in a nutshell. Now, we get the rough country 3-inch kit. You can do this with just spacers. You can really get it affordable. But he went for the fully loaded N3 series strut. So a 3-inch lifted strut, the rear coils themselves, as well as the rear shocks. Now, this kit, 3-inch lift kit, does not require upper control arms, and they don't even offer it through rough country. However, the customer wanted some beefier control arms that give them more ability for the alignment angles and everything like that. Just going to make it better. And these from Freedom Off-Road are ridiculously tough upper control arms. They are strong, they are beefy, and they'll be going in as well as an addition. But you do not need them on this kit. Just want to make that clear. So really, there's not even like a big hardware kit because you have rear coils, which are similar to like a Jeep. Your rear shocks and the hardware that goes with the shocks, the struts. And so it's a loaded strut. We're replacing what's in the front end there now. And then we went ahead and ordered the upper control arm bolts as well, because sometimes they use one long bolt, which is a nightmare to get out. We'll get into that. Adds a lot of time to this lift itself, but that's okay. We'll get there. As soon as the 4Runner gets here, we'll do a walk around, kind of show you what it looks like. Get in here on the lift. All right, freight train's in the way. We'll have to do some vehicle shuffling, but customer just came by, dropped it off. Here it is. It's actually, this thing is super clean for an 07. And remember, we're up here in New England in our Maine. So it is, for what it is, and like I said, we had this thing up in the lift last year and oil undercoated it. It's clean. It is clean for an older rig, and it's going to look so different with that 3-inch lift in it. I can't wait. There may be some minor trimming. We kind of talked about that with the customer as well. We'll get into that if we have to. He's planning on doing it. We'll at least take the front fenders off for him. And then obviously when we bring it in, he just did the brakes on it too. Power stop all the way around. Pretty cool. We're going to give the front end a shakedown, check the ball joints, check the tie rods, sway bar links, anything that we're going to disrupt or we're going to be involved in and changing things. Obviously the upper ball joints are getting changed because it's part of control arm. But yeah, so let's bring it inside and do a shakedown. All right, now that we got it in the shop, I'm going to bring the jack over here with the weight on the ball joints, lift up the lower control arms with the jack, and put a pry bar underneath here and check for any play or excessive play in the lower ball joint, because the upper one, we really don't care. We'll get it up in the air, we'll shake things down and look it over before we start tearing into it. All right, it's kind of what I was saying there. You jack it up, put your pry bar under here, and you're going to, I can't do it while holding the camera, but you got to look underneath here. Geez, I can almost do that. Watch this. Is it going to feel and watch for play? Same thing, I'll come out over here again. Like I was saying, I come over here, get even more leverage from the outside of the tire. We'll check it out, and you can see the suspension kind of flexing. So let me finish shaking this down, see what we got. Is getting a 3-inch lift in it. The 265, 65, 17s are just going to look way too stock, and they're just like a average street run tire anyway. Check these out. These are the Nittos right here. 285. What are we running? What is it? I think it's 285 70s. What it is? Yeah, 285 70 17. This is a really, I guess, it's not super aggressive, but it's a nice, like, blocky all-terrain, if I was going to explain it as a tire, because it's cool. And it's got the side lugs, It's a nice tire. Nitto makes great tires to begin with. And I think he's going to get a lot of life out of these, some good wear out of them, and it's a lot bigger than what's on there. So when I pull one off, I'll set it side by side. Of course, there's no air in this one, but you get the idea. And like I said, before we get started, kind of give everything a once over and a look over and a shakedown. This has that. So if you look on Rough Country's site, it'll actually tell you this lift kit won't fit with the, I believe it's called the Xreas suspension on these, which this does have. So if you look at it, it's got a hydraulic fitting on there. I thought it was just the rear, but it runs plumbed rear to front, side to side, the whole deal. Customer's aware of that. He's already done his homework. He wants the whole system just either abandoned or removed. I got to find out if he wants me to remove all the lines or just abandon it in place. But it's coming out. So will it fit? It will fit, but you're going to lose your Xreas suspension, which is like a performance suspension back in 2007, if that gives you any idea how many miles. Almost 200,000 miles on these things. It's time to go. That's funny. I'm just looking this thing over and look at that. It's part of that Xreas suspension. It's actually a Yamaha. Huh. That's pretty cool. So as you can see, it's plumbed all the way in to here and tied into this rear shock as well. In the front, down the frame, all of this. There is no electrical connector that I can see on this thing on either side. There's one on either side too. It's a pretty extensive system. But it's going away. So it's tied to the front. It runs side to side, front to back. It runs down the side of your frame here. This is part of it as well on either side. Then obviously it connects into the rear shock as well. Do you want just these disconnected and abandoned in place, or do you want me to go ahead and remove the entire system? Lines, fittings, everything, just get rid of it. All right, as you can see, that is quite a difference in tire, going from a 265 to a 285. More aggressive. It's gonna look nice. That's gonna be a nice setup on this thing. I like that. I always like to do a little comparison to see what the difference is. It's like, damn, because that's gonna be height on top of the 3-inch lift. And check it out, just power stop brakes. But like I said, the Xreas hydraulic suspension, it's just basically like hydraulic lines. They're all gonna just come out and go away, and that'll clean this all up. Because this stuff doesn't have that. So if you look at Rough Country's site, it'll say it will not fit this model. And technically they're right, because you won't have that hydraulic Xreas system anymore in it. As far as I'm concerned, outdated, probably doesn't do anything anymore anyway, and the customer wants it removed. And then you go into these here. So pretty nice. And Cletus is visiting. Hi, buddy. He's figured out the mezzanine. I got Caleb out here actually helping me do some recording so you get a little bit different perspective from what I'm usually doing. But in a nutshell, not a direct how-to, but what we're doing here. So there's a little bit additional because we're taking off this hydraulic suspension system at the same time. So I won't get into all that detail, but I'm going to disconnect it from every one of these struts and let it drain out, let the hydraulic fluid drain out. But to get the strut out and the new strut in, basically what we're going to do is disconnect the ball joint, the upper ball joint, disconnect the sway bar link, disconnect the tie rod end, obviously unbolt the strut itself, top and bottom. And depending on the ABS wire, you may be unplugging the ABS wire too. Pry this down and out of the way. Out comes the old, in goes the new, just like that. Now the ball joints are loose. Basically, I took my hammer, smacked the ball joint there, and it drops down. They make tools, impact tools. I have some that you can drive in there. So it usually will ruin the boot. So you can do the same thing on the tie rod and smack this. One thing to keep in mind, like on this one, because it's up a New England vehicle, the, wherever my finger is, I don't know if you can see it, but the cotter pin was rotted and broken right off. So I'll have to tap or drill the end of that stud out there and put new cotter pins in when we go ahead and do that. All right, started breaking the Xreas hydraulic assist on the suspension apart because we're removing the system completely and draining it down. It's essentially hydraulic fluid or almost like a brake fluid. So we're gonna hit all 4 of these and drain them out so we can get these front shocks right out of here with a strut. All right, we're using our leverage enhancing, or how Caleb would call it, engineering. See how it's under a little bit of pressure, the fluid? Woo! There you go, Cletus. Yucky. So we'll let that side drain. And this side's tied to that one. That one's tied to this one. And they actually cross. Actually, I think this one is tied to the right rear, and the right front's tied to the left rear. I think that's how they plumbed it. All right, I'm working my way down. We got the front struts disconnected from the hydraulic Xreas Assist Performance Suspension System. Right here, we disconnected this line here. Then you can disconnect the rear, take this module off, and then basically unplumb it right here and take the rear shock off, and then the system's gone. Now, I gotta say this as a disclosure. I can't advise you to do this, and I can't say it's okay to do this because it's not. It's not factory. Although you can get these 4Runners without this suspension system in it, a standard suspension, which is what we're putting in, so the lift kit doesn't. So the lift kit doesn't have that. So that was an option. It didn't come in all models. So take it for what it's worth. Do what you want. Holy mackerel! Out comes the system. That gone. Now we can pull this through here. I think. Or not. Yeah.
There you go.
Straight out, down, around. Ooh, making a mess. This one side. All right, so the upper strut mount bolts, these two are fine. The one on the back, especially the passenger side, it is an absolute nightmare to get to, and as you can imagine, it's not coming off. Okay. All right, me again, Caleb abandoned me. We did get the rear bolt on the upper strut on the other side. I was able to get onto it with the wrench and muscle my way through it. It sucked. That is a terrible design on Toyota's part. Whew. At least these are going away and it's gonna be new bolts and everything. So disconnected the upper ball joint, a little grease there. Sway bar length. The strut is completely undone right now. I just gotta pry down on the lower control arm a little bit and pop that baby out of there. Then we're gonna work on getting these control arms out. Again, not part of the rough country kit, but he wants that upgrade, so we're gonna go ahead and try to get these babies out too. I'm not gonna lie, I anticipated this stuff to come apart better than it is. I know it's old, it's 07, we're in New England, but it's in really good shape. This thing is clean for an 07, but 180,000 miles, none of this stuff's ever been off, and yes, there's some rust on it, so they're fighting me. But I got the upper control arm bolt and or nut loose. I just got to go ahead and drive it out of there. So I started filming, as you can see, it's kind of greasy. Hold on, let me wipe you off. Oh, I started filming with my iPhone 16 Pro Max because the thing films phenomenal. And talked to some other YouTubers, that's what they're using, and I've been happy with the quality so far. And let me know, drop a comment if you think so as well. And while you're there, hit subscribe, that'd be great. And drop a comment and see what else you'd like to see. Anyway, get back to it. The 4Runner here, upper control arms and the bolts, just so you know, Toyota in their infinite wisdom used one upper control arm bolt that's like 14 inches long. So the nut goes on the back side and then the bolt goes through, all the way through, and you have to fish this thing out of there. And where it ends up coming through is through the front radiator support, is where you're actually gonna get this bolt to come out. Look how easy I made that look. All right, now the upper control arm's out of the way. And you don't have to take that out to get the strut out of here, but it's certainly gonna make it easier. Same thing with the install, with no control arm in there. We'll pry down a touch on the lower control arm, pop this strut out of there, both sides. Then it's completely stripped apart, and we got rid of the hydro system. It's all gone from this side here. Both sides actually in the front, and the front would actually start going back together. So I just wanted to get to a rip-out comfortable point tonight, because it's like 7:30 now Friday night, and I'm tired and hungry. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you gotta take the sway bar out too. I had already loosened it, and I forgot to mention that, because that makes pulling that strut, which is all out, everything's completely out of here now. Woo! Pretty easy once that sway bar is out of the way, and the upper control arm's out of the way. It's all wide open. So I know we'll have to pry it down a little bit more. You're gonna watch your brake lines and your ABS line. Make sure you're not kinking or stretching or doing any damage to those. But this is a good stopping point for tonight. I'm gonna clean up. I'm a mess. I always start with gloves and I end up without them. And I'll come back in the morning. We're gonna put the front end together and then finish stripping the rear. Then that goes on. Oh yeah, and tires. All right, guys, fresh start, Saturday morning, clean hands. Won't be for long, I'm sure, but we're gonna go ahead and get the struts, take these nuts off. We're gonna go ahead and get these struts set in place loosely, and then pop the upper control arms in. We are gonna go with the new hardware because the other stuff, the nuts came off so hard, we might have put a twist into that bolt. So we are gonna put the new hardware in because we have it anyway. Wow, it's amazing how easy that goes in there without the upper control arm or anything in there. You're just like, whoop, doot, doot, doot. And those suck to take off, but the new ones are brand new, so naturally it's gonna be a lot easier putting them on. Mine are prying on the lower control arm to get that lower bolt in there. Then we'll go ahead and put the upper control arm on there with the new hardware. We will go ahead and grease that up as well to make sure everything goes in nicely. And in the future, it can come apart if he needs it to. All right, I'm tightening, torquing down hardware now. And one thing I do in my other videos, and I'm gonna show it in this one, is I always paint mark everything. Now this stuff isn't even gonna show after we oil undercoat this truck. But it's a mental note as you go around and you tighten things, you know it's done. You don't have to go back because you see that, it's done. You paint it when you tighten it. All right, upper control arm. Pay attention because there is a right and a left. The bracket for the brake line or ABS line is typically on the rear. This would be the right, this would be the left. So pay attention to that. When you take yours off, what I like to do is just lay them right on the ground where I took them off so you know, kind of see the sweeping bend of how they go. So get the new hardware for the upper control arms. I'm gonna go ahead and grease that and then slide that in carefully with the upper control arm. All right, upper control arm is in. I'm not gonna do pay attention to your wire routing. Make sure that you're on the right side of the control arm because it does go into some brackets as well as one on the control arm. I'm gonna snug up the upper control arm. I'm not gonna tighten this until everything's together and the weight of the truck is on to it. So it's sitting kind of relatively where it wants to be. That's when you go ahead and do a final torque on that bolt. But yeah, in general, you can snug it up right now and we'll go ahead and finish buttoning up the front end. All right, I get the front end pretty much buttoned up. The upper ball joint's back in, the lines are all secured, tie rod's back in, the lower strut bolt is tight. Remember, we're not gonna tighten the upper control arm until the weight of the vehicle is on it. But we now need to put this heavy ass sway bar and links back in place by myself because I got nobody down here this morning. So let me manhandle that for a minute and see if I can't get it close to in place. Get right back with you. All right, all back together. The sway bar and the links all back in. Witness marked. I didn't mention earlier. I did mention marking your fasteners as you tighten them, but we've always traditionally called them witness marks. So you call it what you want. I think it's a good habit to get into, especially as newer mechanics. That's an old school mechanic thing prior to or not using lock wire or something like that in the racing field. But anyway, the front is all in and together. We're gonna go ahead and finish ripping out the hydro in the rear. So it's just from here back to here. And then it's rear shocks and coils in the back. I think we can disconnect the sway bar links. That's probably about it. All right, and before I got into removing the shocks and all that stuff, we got rid of the rest of the Xreas. Xreas? I don't even know how you pronounce it. Doesn't matter. I'm sure someone's gonna call me out on it. It's all gone. So it's literally all there. The plumbing, everything is gone. Now we just got to go back onto the traditional suspension, which is the shocks and the coils. So yeah, we're back on track. And if you're a shop, you want to pay attention to that because obviously that's quite a bit of extra time taking that stuff all out of there and keeping it intact. I mean, for the most part, if the customer wants to sell the stuff, I doubt anyone wants it. Anyway, just want to mention that. All right, I just want to give Milwaukee Fuel little M12 here, stubby impact driver. My God, I've used the hell out of this thing in the past few years. I was skeptical at first because I'm an old impact or air tool guy, but this thing is a workhorse. I'm impressed. All right, the upper shock bolts on these things, even though it's there and it's intact, it's rusted, and everything wants to just twist and turn when you're trying to loosen it. Honestly, I think it's plenty of room around it. I'm gonna get a Sawzall and just cut the top off and save a ton of time. We're not reusing these. All right, this shock out, disconnected the sway bar in the back to allow us some more room to drop this down. This spring is in here really loose now. Literally can just pop this spring out of here, throw the other spring in there and this shock, and then we'll move on to the other side. All right, this is something, as you can see, it is a bigger, beefier spring. So you might need a buddy to go ahead and pop this thing in there. Maybe. I'm gonna try it. And since I don't have a buddy here, I don't have any friends, I'm gonna have to opt for compressing that spring a little bit because I don't want to wrestle this thing. Yeah, I did say that. No friends, right? That's depressing. See? Look at that. Who needs friends? Now you just got to use a wrench to go ahead and undo that because it's too hard to get in there with the impact. But it takes a few minutes, a lot less wrestling. Yes, you could have disconnected the... you could disconnect more of the suspension, But then you're gonna get into brake line brackets and everything that you don't want to disrupt in case you cause leaks. All right, now that that coil's in, I'm gonna go ahead and put the bushings and the hardware on this shock, pop the shock in on this side, and we'll move on to the other side and do the exact same thing. I just found out I recorded that the wrong way, but I wanted to mention that the washers or bushing retainers, there's 2 different size diameters in these. So if you try to slide this one on, you're like, it doesn't, nope, no go. So there's a bottom and a top to these. So it goes this, then a bushing, like so. I can't do this one-handed. Then slide it up through the truck, then the top bushing, then a washer, then a nut. All right, we've got the lift all installed, front and rear. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a little grease. He's got greasable sway bar end links. I'm gonna grease those. I'm gonna give this thing a once over, kind of walk around, look at lines, fittings, everything. Everything's as tight as it's ever gonna be right now because this thing's at full articulation because it's just hanging down. Now remember, we still have to tighten the front upper control arm bolts after we mount tires and put those on. But in the meantime, like I said, I'm gonna go through and give everything a once over and a look over, as well as I'll probably, without dropping this, I will probably go through and on the lower control arms, crack these all loose so when they go to do an alignment, it'll be a little bit easier for them. All right, we've got all the lower control arm bolts cracked loose. Soaked them with penetrating oil. I got them to start to move a little bit. They don't move, you don't get full range. That one you do. And I think one on the other side you do as well. But it's gonna allow them to get the alignment as close as possible. And these we're gonna soak in as well. Those can seize into the control arms and it can be a nightmare if you try to change those because you gotta cut all the bolts out, replace the whole lower control arm and everything. So I think that the customer will be, I'm gonna talk to the customer, perfectly happy with getting them so they can get this alignment as close as possible. And obviously they're gonna do the toe because we did get some movement. It is soaking, so it's gonna continue to soak for a few days before he gets this back. So with the next step, we're gonna go ahead and get some tires mounted so we can set this thing on the ground and tighten up the upper control arms. Before we set it on the ground, because I'm gonna be oil undercoating this truck, I'm gonna clean and re-oil undercoat in the fender well, so I'm only gonna put the wheels on one time. All right, here we go. Now that it's mounted on the rim, you get a good perspective of the difference in the size and the beefiness. That's gonna look pretty sick on there. All right, got this machine from my buddy, Austin. And this is the old Coach 700. It's an old school machine, but it still works pretty damn good. But it maxes out around 17, 18 inch wheels. That's about it. So let me get the rest of these things mounted up. Then I'll do the oil undercoat and the fender wells and get them on the truck. All right, that is way too much of a workout. I can't imagine doing tires every day with my back. No way. Tires are all mounted and balanced. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go grab lunch. And then what we'll do is we will blow this down and oil undercoat the fender wells. I gotta pop these fender mud flaps off for them. And then we'll mount the tires, set this thing on the ground, tighten up the upper control arms and see what it looks like. All right guys, so I'm gonna jump on getting the oil undercoating done, cleaned off and blown off and get our New Hampshire oil undercoat in here. This product here has mouse out. It's a great product. We do a ton of it and I've had great luck with it. This is not an oil undercoating video, but if you're interested in oil undercoating up here in New England, I'd highly recommend it. Jump over to some of our other videos, and I've done straight up, I think it's under my how-to playlist, oil undercoating videos. So check them out. All right, see, as you can see, that cleans it up real nice, that oil undercoating. But it's messy, so you kind of wipe it back off the shocks and everything else. So we'll do the rest of it later, but now we can put the wheels and tires on and set this thing on the ground. All right, the wheels and tires are on. This thing's gonna look killer. Man, does it change the look of a vehicle. What a nice stance it's gonna have. He has the black hubcaps, factory ones on there, and they're really nice hubcaps, but I'm really digging the aluminum look, like the contrast instead of all black. I'll show you one that's all black. That's just my opinion. I'm gonna mention it to him if you consider it, because I only put one on so far. I don't know. I mean, the black looks really good too, but I don't know. All right, so let's lower it. Just a little bit of oil undercoating on this camera. And torque the wheels and tighten the upper control arms. All right, just finishing up the wheel torque now. And take a look at this thing. She looks absolutely killer. I can't wait to see it outside. I am gonna turn the wheel and check for interferences. Possibly have to do some trimming on this thing. But I don't know with the stock wheels. And it wouldn't be right if we didn't have a whole pile of suspension parts and hydraulic stuff and everything else for the customer. And it always comes to that. It's like, what do we do with this stuff? Do you want it? You want me to junk it? And most people don't want it. They just want it junked. And we do scrap metal art, so sometimes we use some of it in that. So the next thing, let's get this outside, do a walk around, and wrap this up. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell a friend. I don't care. Just hit the button. All right, guys, you ready? There it is. Oh, yeah. The 285 70 17s on the factory wheels. And he actually opted to get rid of the black hubcaps for now, which I think was a great decision because it really makes those wheels pop instead of all being black and lost out. So let me check you. That was weird. Let me show you the truck. All right, there it is. There it is. It gives it a nice stance. And honestly, yeah, we took the rear mud flaps off the front. It comes very close to rubbing right here. Very close. And maybe once in a while it might rub a little bit, but it's not even worth messing with it right now. Those tires and everything's going to settle out a little bit and it will rub even less. Now, if he puts aftermarket wheels on it, it's definitely going to rub and we'll have to take care of that. But check that out. That's a completely different look, completely different stance on this truck. It really, like, that's how it should have come from the factory. It's aggressive in the photos, and the camera doesn't really do it justice, but it's big now. Like, it's got ground clearance. It looks good.